Numbers don't lie, but you can lie with numbers.
You're listening to The Critical Thought, where we challenge our listeners to use critical thinking when examining the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Hey, this is JT, and welcome to another episode of The Critical Thought. We get emails all the time, and someone shot this to us. We just want to say thank you, Rashana. We appreciate it. In this episode, we're going to deal with something that I learned early on when I took a statistics class in college. The day of the class, I walked in. The professor wrote on the chalkboard, "Numbers don't lie, but people can lie with numbers." And he gave us an example. He says, you have a husband and wife. They're moving to a new school district. So they're reading all the publications about where's the best place for their kids to go. And what do? They find three places. The first place they read, this particular school has an average of 22.5% of all the students are A students, honor roll students. In the second school, everybody is 29.3% A students. But the third one caught their attention. You see, in this school, the average was 61.5%. All these students were A students. So him and his wife, they decided to go down and they had to talk to the principal and the superintendent to find out what in the world are y'all doing at that school? And so they sat there and the principal explained, yes, and it was the last school in the whole state. But we got a new superintendent and he instituted a new plan that has now taken our scores to over 60% of our students are now A students. So the husband and wife, they look at each other and everything. And so the husband says, well, how in the world did you do that? And the superintendent says, well, I instituted a new program. You see, in our school, we looked around and we says, what can we do? And so I looked at the other schools. In order to get an A in all the other districts, you have to get at least a 93 to 100. We decided here, get 75. From 75 to 100, you get an A. And you know what? That's exactly what the Watchtower is doing. And we're going to show you exactly how they're doing it. And now we have the latest thing from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, better known as the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And that involves the counting of time. The counting of time, the most important aspect about a Jehovah's Witness and their spirituality. We all remember, you and I, we were measured by what we turned in as our field service time. Well, the Watchtower just made the announcement of a new arrangement. Is it not interesting that these new arrangements, when it comes to counting time, they serve only one purpose: to keep the numbers high? Because if they left it like it is, the numbers would go down. Let's just take a little stroll down memory lane. You see, at one time, in order to be a regular pioneer, you had to turn in 100 hours. And as the number of pioneers began to drop, the society lowered the hours. They lowered the standards, just like that school did. And what did they do? They took the numbers and they made the numbers rise. Given the appearance, we got a lot of pioneers now. And now the numbers continue to drop again. And what do they do with the pioneers? They lowered the numbers again. Auxiliary pioneers, the same exact thing. They lowered the numbers. Some of you may have been around this organization when it was a requirement to turn in 10 hours every month. And I mean, people struggled to get those 10 hours. You see, because it was very important to get 10 hours. If not, after a period of 1 month of missing your time, you became known as an irregular publisher. If you went 6 months, you became an inactive publisher. So what did the Watchtower Society do? They did the same thing that the superintendent did. They lowered the standards. They got rid of the 10 hours. In fact, you couldn't even be appointed as a ministerial servant or an elder. And interestingly, secretly, that is actually still in effect. It's often referred to as the national average. If a man in the congregation is being considered for a ministerial servant or an elder, and his hours is less than the national average, There's going to be a discussion as to whether this man should be appointed. So you have these quotas. They're just like a regular sales company. You got to hit the quotas. If you don't hit the quotas, you get in trouble. Any person who's ever been in sales knows you got to hit your numbers. And it's the same thing in the Watchtower. You got to hit your numbers. So what happened? Once again, we see the same thing. So the Watchtower drops the requirement of 10 hours down to anything that you can turn in that's more than 1 hour. Once again, as the numbers begin to drop, the Watchtower decided to make another decision. We're going to lower the standards so that we can keep the numbers high. As we said before, numbers don't lie, but you can lie with numbers. You can give the impression of one thing when in reality, it's telling a different story. It's telling you that people are not going out. They're not doing those hours anymore. But you lower the standard, it gives the impression that they are. And so what do we see the society do? They put in place this very interesting little concept. They had a lot of senior Jehovah's Witnesses, persons who were up in their age. People have been faithful for many, many years, and they couldn't get 1 hour a month. I remember this so well because there was a Jehovah's Witness in the congregation that I served in. This woman, she literally, her and her husband, they started congregations. She was also of the anointed. But because of her health, she could not get out in field service. She couldn't go out and knock on doors, and so she could not make the 1 hour requirement. I remember this because I was a secretary in the congregation. I used to put all the time on the kitchen table and take my little calculator and all the auxiliary pioneers, all the regular pioneers, and all the publishers, tabulate all the time, put it onto the society's paperwork, send it off to Brooklyn. Then I would record the time on the publisher's record card. The record card that follows you wherever you go as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Your hours, they speak as to who you are, what you are, and you will be judged harshly if your hours are low. Every Jehovah's Witness knows that. You do not want to get on the circuit overseer's bad boy list, okay? This particular sister, very interesting. I called her up to see, did she have any time? And this was actually the 6th month. And this woman, after 50 years of being a regular pioneer, was no longer able to get that 1 hour. She broke down and started crying. She was saying, Brother JT, I don't have any time. I don't have any time. I'm not going to be in the yearbook this year. I said, yearbook? Well, she was talking about the service report. She had been faithful to God all these years, and because of the conditioning that she had received as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, she knew that she would not be counted as an active witness in the service report that year. And here she was breaking down. And I tried to explain to her, sister, Jehovah remembers what you did when you was young, but in her mind, I can't get that 1 hour. Now, the service department, they realize because they get the numbers. And one thing the organization is real good at, those boys are good at running numbers, whether it's money numbers or whether it's service hour numbers. They are good at running the numbers. And so what do? They looked around and they realized we got a lot of folks who might have like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. We need to get that time in and we can keep them being counted as a publisher. And sure enough, the Watchtower lowered the time down to 15 minutes, but there was a stipulation. It had to be approved. Someone had to approve that you could just turn in 15 minutes, and was only allowed for those who were perhaps infirm or elderly. But you know what? Oh my goodness. It's amazing what happens with time when numbers start dropping. Now with the pandemic, they're facing an issue of, once again, the publisher numbers dropping. The number of people who are publishers is dropping. And what do? You got to hear this. This is good.
The announcement as presented to the congregation as follows. Provision for reporting less than 15 minutes. We deeply appreciate your efforts to share in the ministry each month, despite the restrictions imposed upon us by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have no doubt that Jehovah understands your circumstances and treasures your whole-souled service. We are therefore pleased to inform you that until further notice, any publisher who shares in the ministry during a month, even if this amounts to less than 15 minutes, will continue as an active publisher. If you share in the ministry for less than 1 hour, all you will need to do is to inform your group overseer that you shared in the ministry during the month. You do not need to specify the number of minutes you shared in preaching. As you do what you can to fully accomplish your ministry, please be assured of our warm Christian love and best wishes. 2 Corinthians 8:12.
Is it not interesting how they worded that? We are pleased to announce. And as we mentioned in one of our videos a little while ago, it is amazing how Jehovah's Witnesses would be so proud, so proud. Isn't it wonderful that the society is letting us count time in this way? Just if we speak to someone, we still can remain a publisher. Now, our form is about thinking critically. Critical thinking is what our form is about. Do you know what that really says? It really says that counting time had no value whatsoever. And here you are going to have Jehovah's Witnesses who are proud that the organization is now taking a burden off them that God never put on them. Is it not amazing? Is it not amazing? If you go back to the reference that is mentioned in this video, it is called a requirement of God. Requirements of God. It is the very beginning of when the Watchtower started counting time, requiring Jehovah's Witnesses to count time. Is it not amazing how God got it wrong? Because now it's not a requirement of God. That is absolutely amazing. So we wanted to share this with you. As my professor said, numbers don't lie, but you can lie with numbers. And once again, the Watchtower is going to give the illusion that they have all of this activity going on. Why? Because with this new arrangement, the number of publishers will not drop. Can you imagine counting time today? You at Lowe's. Somebody in line says, things are pretty bad. All you got to say is, we're living deep in the last days according to the Bible. And you get to count time. Imagine talking to your coworker. Did you realize that God's name is Jehovah? You get to count time. Just imagine a telemarketer calls you. All you got to do is say, go to jw.org and you can count time. If you were to use any of these 3 suggestions I gave to you, you get to be counted for the next 3 months, an active publisher. This has been JT.
Hey, this is Lady C. Thank you for tuning in to The Critical Thought. We appreciate having you in our audience. Not only that, but we invite you to subscribe to our channel and be sure to hit that bell so that you can receive notifications when we upload new content. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you for being in our audience.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.